My name is Serena Lee Calder. I'm 30, 8 months pregnant, and I have always been the kind of daughter who shows up with the right gift and the wrong expectations. We stood in the doorway like it was a border. My two kids pressed close, one clutching the satin handles of a small gift bag, the other squeezing my fingers, trusting I had brought them somewhere that wanted us. The house looked polished from the threshold, soft yellow lighting, the clink of silverware, the kind of staged warmth that photographs well. I told myself to breathe. Inside, the dining table gleamed, plates lined up like soldiers, wine glasses half full and catching light. My parents sat with practiced composure. Lauren, freshly promoted, basking, tilted back in her chair. Her husband smirked. Their two children were already in high chairs, bibs tied, faces shining with the privilege of belonging. We hadn't been invited exactly. Jake had told me earlier, "Just come, Serena, it'll be fun. Everyone will be there." He'd said it with that careful voice like he was wrapping bad news in glitter. I wanted to believe him. I wanted my kids to see a room where they could sit. My mother ignored the doorway. She fussed with plates like a stage manager, never looking up. My father stood with his arms crossed, jaw set in a hard line that always meant somebody else was wrong. Lauren leaned back, amused. Then my father said it. "Why did you bring the kids?" His eyes slid over my belly and back to the table. "We didn't invite you. Why are you even here?" The words hit like cold water. My youngest looked up, confused. My older one, old enough to understand, watched my face like it was the weather. Lauren laughed. "There are no seats for them," she chimed. "The other grandchildren are sitting here." She ran a hand over her daughter's hair, cooing. "Our beautiful girl's children," my father echoed, as if Lauren's success had conferred a bloodline upgrade. "She'll finally be able to help us now." The laughter folded over itself. I set the gift bag on a side table. "So our sister is golden now, huh?" I said lightly. "Now that she's been promoted, she doesn't need my help anymore." Lauren rolled her eyes. "Who needs you, Serena?" I smiled, and it wasn't nice. "Perfect. That means I don't have to pay the mortgage anymore." It was like someone unplugged the room. The laughter died mid-breath. My father's face twitched. My mother, who had been performing a ballet with plates, finally met my eyes. Lauren straightened, the smirk sliding. "Wait," Lauren said. "What?" "You don't need me," I repeated gently, "so I'll stop making the extra payments. You can handle it now." For a second, no one remembered how to be cruel. The air changed shape. A moment before, I was the unnecessary outsider. Suddenly, I was structural. "Come on, Serena," Lauren said with an airy laugh, heat rising at the edges. "Don't be dramatic." I turned to my kids. "All right," I said, "let's go." My father snapped, "You're just going to leave?" "You said we weren't invited," I answered. "I heard you." Lauren glanced at our mother, then back again. "You wouldn't actually stop paying, would you?" I met her eyes. "Watch me." I took my children's hands and moved for the door. That's when I saw Jake, standing half in shadow at the back wall. He hadn't spoken. Hands in his pockets, eyes on the floor. Embarrassed for them. Embarrassed for me. Embarrassed by the way families turn love into leverage. We stepped out. I closed the door with a soft final sound. In the car, my youngest whispered, "Why don't Grandma and Grandpa like us?" I kept my voice calm. "They're being unkind," I said. "But it isn't about you." I smoothed a curl behind an ear and tried to make my smile reach all the way. "We'll fix what we can fix." We drove home through neighborhood streets that looked like postcards, porches and wind chimes and chalk drawings that didn't belong to us. My belly tightened around a small kick. The baby felt like a reminder. Choose the house you bring me home to. When I told Ethan what happened, he stared at me like I'd taken a door off its hinges. He'd wanted to come tonight, but the swelling in my ankles and the exhaustion behind my eyes had convinced him to keep me out of the chaos. 8 months pregnant, 2 kids, a family that believes grace is a currency they can spend for free. The math had never added up. "You did this in front of the kids?" he asked softly. "They did it," I said. "I just decided the bill was due." He reached out and put his palm on my belly. "You okay?" "I am." It was only half true. Part of me still stood in that doorway, being told my children didn't have seats. Part of me still watched Jake staring at the carpet. Part of me was 12 years old again, learning how to disappear to avoid the next explosion. A week unfolded like a clean sheet, and for the first time in years, the air in my house didn't smell like panic. No late-night calls about emergencies that always ended in my bank account. No, "Serena, sweetheart, can you just cover?" in Mom's bright voice. No Dad's terse, "We expect better," after I paid the bill. I almost forgot the table, the laughter, the phrase "other grandchildren," as if my kids were rental. I packed school lunches. I timed breaths when the baby pressed up under my ribs. I took Ethan's hand and let him make me tea I didn't want, but drank anyway. Then Jake showed up. He stood in my doorway like a ghost, eyes rimmed red, the shape of a confession hanging off him. "Can I come in?" It wasn't like him to stop by without warning. I set down the folded onesies and nodded. He slumped into a kitchen chair and rubbed his face. "Lauren lost her job," he said. I blinked. "Already?" He let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Yeah, got fired. She's screwed." I leaned back, waiting for the part that would hurt. "Let me guess. She spent the raise before she got it." Jake shrugged. "Worse. Some guy at work, she thought he was her boyfriend, stole a bunch of money from the company and pinned it on her. She didn't see it coming. She's not just fired, Serena. She might get sued." I whistled under my breath. Karma moves fast. Jake looked up. "Mom and Dad are spiraling. They were counting on her to help with bills. Now they're panicking." "So," I said, "they want me to fix it." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I laughed, a sound without joy. "They told my kids there were no seats," I said. "They told me I wasn't invited, and now I'm the emergency number again." "Look, I'm not saying you owe them anything," Jake said. "I just thought you should know." "Good," I said too easily, "because I'm not paying another cent." He winced, then nodded. "I figured you'd say that." We sat in the quiet of my kitchen, a room where the only expectations belong to the people who live here. I could feel the baby roll, a slow current under skin, a living reminder that my first job is to keep her safe. The second is to teach my other two that love isn't a bill. Jake left an hour later. He squeezed my shoulder on the way out, and for a moment he looked like a little boy again. "Text me if you need anything," I said. "Same," he managed. That night, my phone lit up at midnight. "Mom." I let it ring, then ring again. Ethan stirred beside me, half asleep. "Who keeps calling?" "My mother," I said. "At midnight?" I flipped the phone over, face down on the nightstand. It vibrated once, twice, again. An insistence I knew too well. A new text glowed through the dark. "Jake, pick up. It's bad." My stomach dropped. I called him back. His voice was thin. "Serena, you need to come. Dad's having chest pains. Mom's freaking out." I sat up, heart thrumming. "Did she call 911? "Not yet. She called you first. She says you'll know what to do." Of course she did. The baby kicked hard, as if to say, "Remember the doorway." "I'm coming," I said. Ethan pushed up on an elbow. "You sure?" "I just want to see what's going on." I slipped on a sweater. He studied my face, but didn't argue. He knows better than to try to save me from my decisions, or from my family. The drive felt like a tunnel with a single light at the end. I thought of my father's crossed arms, Lauren's laugh, my mother's busy hands pretending not to see me. I thought of a table and all the chairs that belonged to other people. I didn't know it yet, but the power I took back in a doorway would follow me into a living room, into a hospital corridor, into every room where someone tried to spend me like loose change. I was done funding their dignity. The street to my parents' house felt shorter than usual, like the night had folded it in half. By the time I pulled into the driveway, every light in the living room was on, too bright, like they hoped illumination could outrun consequence. I didn't knock. Old habits die last. Dad was slumped in his recliner, shirt unbuttoned at the throat, sweat beading along his hairline, his fingers pressed into his sternum like he could hold the pressure in place. Mom hovered beside him with a dish towel as if a kitchen rag had ever solved a crisis. Jake paced the length of the rug, wearing a path between the coffee table and the window. "Serena, thank God," Mom said, clutching my forearm. "Your father, he can't—" "Did you call 911?" I asked. She blinked, slow, as if I'd asked for a recipe. "Well, I didn't know if—" I was already dialing. "Hi. Possible cardiac symptoms. Male, 60s. Chest pain, sweating, shortness of breath." My voice was calm in a way that made me angry. "Yes, he's awake. No history we know of. Address is—" I gave it, then hung up. Dad looked up, embarrassed by his own body. "I'm fine," he wheezed. "It's nothing." "Then sit still for nothing," I said, kneeling to check his pulse anyway. My 8-month belly made it awkward, but I counted in my head while he pretended this wasn't happening. The clock on the wall ticked like a metronome conducting our denial. "They're on their way," I told him. slow breaths. Mom hovered closer. He was fine until tonight, she said, eyes darting to Jake, to me, to the door, as if guilt might arrive in a uniform. It's all this stress. From what? I asked flatly. Her mouth opened, closed. From everything. Sirens stitched the night. I stepped back to give the paramedics room. They were efficient in that reassuring, impersonal way. Questions, cuff, monitor. One of them glanced up at me while the machine beeped. Not a heart attack, he said. But his blood pressure is dangerously high. Stress can do that. Jake exhaled like a held breath escaping. Mom whispered, "See? Not a heart attack," like she'd won a raffle. The paramedics lifted Dad gently, the recliner sighing as his weight left it. Mom clung to the side of the gurney. "Stanley will ride with me," she told no one and everyone. "We're going to the hospital." "Good," I said. "You should have called them first." She flinched. "I panicked," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "You called me because that's what you do." Her eyes glassed over, the righteous hurt of a woman who believes intentions erase outcomes. "You don't have to be cruel." "I'm not being cruel," I said. "I'm being accurate." They rolled Dad toward the door, wheels humming against the wood. He met my eyes for half a second. Pride did something small and miserable in his face. Gratitude wrapped in resentment. He wanted me to fix something he wouldn't name. "Text me the updates," I told Jake. He nodded, jaw tight. "I'll ride behind them." The house felt oddly quiet once they left, like a stage between acts. I stood alone in the living room that had always been allergic to truth. My gaze snagged on the dining table, plates stacked now, glasses drained. I could still see the outline of the evening we weren't invited to. On my way out, I paused at the doorway and let my palm rest on the frame, the way you touch a person you're saying goodbye to. Then I locked the door behind me, a reflex I didn't know I still had. In the car, Ethan's text waited. "You okay?" "Yes," I wrote. Paramedics took him. High BP, not a heart attack. A beat. "Do you need me to come?" "No. Get some sleep. I'll be home soon." "Proud of you," he answered. 2 words that landed like a warm coat. At home, I lay awake beside him and listened to the baby shift, a tide turning under my skin. I thought about how, for years, I'd believed disaster would happen if I didn't hold everything together. Tonight the world did not end without me. It simply continued, ungently, on its own. By morning, Jakey's messages charted the hospital night. Observation, labs, a lecture about stress and salt and age. At 7, he wrote, "They'll keep him a day for monitoring." At 8, "Mom says she'll need help with bills while he's out of work this week." There it was, the pivot. Crisis is prefaced to collection. "I'm glad he's okay," I sent back. "I won't be helping with the bills." He didn't reply for a long time. When he did, it was just understood. I made coffee. The apartment was still dim, quiet with the kind of silence you can choose. My kids padded out in pajamas, hair scrambled, cheeks warm with sleep. They climbed into my lap without asking if there was room. I held them and breathed in their small, unedited scent, memorizing the light on their faces before the day complicated them. By the second night, Dad was home. Mom called at dusk, her voice steady, script ready. I let it ring. She switched to voicemail. "Serena, your father's out and resting. We need to talk about the mortgage." I stopped listening. 10 minutes later, Jake arrived without warning again. He looked older than he had yesterday, wearier. "Can I?" he asked, gesturing to the kitchen. I nodded, and he took the same chair as last time, like it remembered him. He put his hands flat on the table. "You should know something." I waited. "The money," he said. "The $4,500 you gave them a few months ago to catch up. Dad didn't use it on the mortgage." My jaw tightened. "Then where did it go?" "To Lauren," he said, not meeting my eyes. "They gave her a big chunk in cash. The rest, furniture she wanted, a weekend away." He swallowed. "They thought she'd pay them back once the promotion settled." I laughed. It wasn't funny. It sounded like a door creaking in an empty house. "So they took my money and fed it to the favorite." He didn't argue. "I'm sorry." I rubbed my thumb over a nick in the table, a small shallow scar that had become part of the wood. "I'm done," I said. "Not just for now, for good." Jake nodded. "I figured." I saw it land in him, the relief and the dread. If I stepped out of the role, who picked up the script? That night, Mom switched tactics. She came in person. The knock was brisk, offended. I opened the door, but left my body in the frame. She looked diminished. Eyes red-rimmed, hair unbrushed in a way that belonged to a version of her I'd never met. It should have moved me. It didn't. "Serena," she said, "we need to talk." "About what?" I asked. "Your father is still being monitored. The doctors say his blood pressure won't stabilize. It's the stress." She paused, breath hitching. "We may lose the house." There it was, naked. "We have nothing. We gave everything to Lauren because we thought she'd take care of us, and she—" Her voice broke. "She won't answer. She hasn't come by. She won't even visit your father." "Wow," I said softly. "That must be hard." Her hands shook. "We made mistakes," she said. "But we have nowhere else to turn. The mortgage is past due. The bank. The medical bills." She wiped at her face. "We can't afford them." She frowned. I stared at her. "A few months ago, I paid nearly $5,000, I said. "You didn't use it on the house. You gave it to Lauren. You chose her, over me, over your grandchildren." She looked down. "And now I'm important again because she isn't," I finished. "Serena, please," she whispered. "We don't know what to do." "Figure it out," I said. She recoiled. "You don't mean that." "I do." Her grief boiled into anger so fast it left steam. "You owe us," she snapped, voice suddenly sharp enough to cut. "We raised you, we fed you, we gave you everything, and now that we need you, you're just going to turn your back?" I almost laughed at the choreography of it. "You didn't raise me to be a person," I said. "You raised a safety net, and you cut holes in it every time Lauren needed a softer landing." "You are selfish," she hissed. "After all we've done." I smiled. "Good luck, Mom." I closed the door. Not a slam, just the sound of a choice. A second later, a dull thud shook the siding. I went to the window in time to see her leg swing back from the side of my car. She was screaming, words I couldn't hear, or maybe didn't want to. Then she climbed into her own car and tore down the street like the night had wronged her. Behind me, Ethan stood in the hallway, hands on his hips, eyes wide. That was a lot. "Yeah," I said, and let out a breath I'd been holding for a decade. "And I'm done." We stood there in the echo, listening to our apartment. Remember, it was a home and not a hallway for other people's chaos to pass through. The baby rolled, amused or approving, I couldn't tell. The next day arrived like a clean page. I made breakfast. I answered work emails. I ignored 3 unknown numbers and 1 text from Lauren. "You're pathetic, jealous, grow up." I didn't reply. The trash took itself out with more ceremony than that message deserved. By afternoon, the air in the nursery was sawdust and hope. Ethan and I fitted the crib slats, measuring and remeasuring like precision could guarantee safety. "Bubble level," he said, passing it to me. We laughed when the bubble floated dead center. A small, private victory. Something in our life balanced. Outside, a car door slammed. Tires crunched the drive. I looked through the curtain. Jake. He came in hot, anger snapping off him like static. "You really just left last night?" he demanded, blowing past the greeting. "Yes," I said. "I left. I'm not their paramedic, their bank, or their apology." He ran a hand through his hair. "Mom's a wreck. Dad's at the hospital for observation. Lauren still won't answer." "Not my problem," I said. I meant it. The words didn't even tremble. He sank into a chair, deflated. "They spent the night doing the math, Serena. When they run out of you, they'll point at me." "You should get out now," I said, "before they load you with their bills and call it love." He stared at the tabletop for a long time. Then he stood. "All right," he said. "Just thought you should know." At the door he paused. "Are you sure you won't regret this?" "For the first time," I said, "I'm sure." He nodded once, something like respect slipping through. "Text me if you need anything." "Same," I said, and I meant that too. He left. The apartment absorbed the quiet like a room finally allowed to keep it. In the nursery, Ethan tightened the last screw. I held the frame while he checked the stability. The crib didn't wobble. My phone buzzed. "Jake. They still think you'll pay." I stared at the words until they went out of focus. Some people don't hear no. They hear try again later. I put the phone face down and traced my palm along the crib rail, feeling the smooth wood under my skin. I thought of chairs at a table that weren't for my children. I thought of gurney wheels and sirens and a dish towel trembling in my mother's hand. I thought of all the ways I had been spent. I chose the house I would bring my baby home to. It would not be a bank. It would not be an altar. It would be a door we could close and a table with enough chairs. By Wednesday, the comm started to feel suspicious. No messages, no calls, not even Jake's quiet check-ins. I should have known silence from my family never meant peace. It meant planning. The first sign came through the mail slot. An envelope, handwritten, no return address, slid onto the floor like guilt on paper. Inside was a folded note in my mother's handwriting and a single check. 960. The same amount I'd lost canceling their Greece booking months ago. Different story, same attempt. A peace offering, disguised as repayment. At the bottom of the note, she'd written, "Let's start over. We need you." I set it on the counter beside a half-eaten apple and didn't touch it again. That evening, Jake called. His voice was tired, worn down by everyone else's expectations. "They're spiraling again," he said. "Mortgage late. Dad can't go back to work yet. Mom says you're being unreasonable." "Unreasonable?" I repeated. "For not financing their collapse?" He didn't argue. "They'll show up, Serena. I just wanted to warn you." He was right. 2 nights later, the pounding on the door came just after 9 p.m. Ethan had just put the kids to bed. The apartment was warm and quiet, the baby kicking in rhythm with the hum of the ceiling fan. When I opened the door, my mother stood there under the porch light, hair pinned up, eyes red and determined. "Serena, please." I didn't invite her in. "Whatever this is, keep it short." Her voice wavered, somewhere between pride and panic. "We may lose the house. Your father's medical bills are stacking. We trusted Lauren." "You mean you funded Lauren," I said. "She was supposed to help," Mom cried. "She said she would, and she didn't." Her shoulders slumped. "We thought you'd understand. You always fix things." "Not anymore." Tears welled up, but the guilt didn't land this time. "We made mistakes," she said, reaching for my arm. "But we're your parents. We need you." I stepped back. "When you told my kids there was no room for them, did you need me then?" Her mouth opened, closed. "That was a misunderstanding." "No," I cut in. "That was the truth showing its face for once." Her voice dropped to a hiss. "You can't just turn your back on family." "I can," I said softly, "and I am." Something cracked behind her eyes, grief splitting into fury. "You owe us," she spat. "We raised you. We gave you everything." I almost laughed. "You raised a resource, not a daughter, and you only remember me when the money runs out." "You are selfish," she shouted. "Ungrateful." I smiled, the calm kind that unnerves people who thrive on chaos. "Good luck, Mom." Then I closed the door. The thud of her palm hit the wood once, twice. Then came the sharp clang of her foot against the side of my car. I didn't move. I let her scream, let the sound burn itself out in the night air until the engine of her own car roared away. When the silence returned, it felt earned. Ethan came out from the hallway, eyes wide. "That was expected," I said. He rubbed his jaw. "You okay?" I nodded. "Better than ever." He looked at the check still on the counter. "You going to cash that?" "No," I said. "I'm keeping it as evidence." The next morning, Jake showed up with a duffel bag and exhaustion on his face. "They kicked me out," he said flatly. "Dad said if I agree with you, I'm not family." I stepped aside. "Then welcome to freedom." He hesitated. "You sure? With the baby coming?" "Jake," I said, "we've both been paying rent for years in a house that never let us belong. You can stay as long as you need." That night, he slept in the guest room, small but quiet. For the first time in our lives, the two of us were under one roof without walking on eggshells. Over breakfast the next morning, he stared at his coffee. "They're never going to change, are they?" "No," I said, "but we did." My phone lit up again, vibrating across the counter. Lauren. I let it ring once, twice, until her name faded. Then came the text. "You're pathetic. You've always been jealous. Grow up." I handed the phone to Jake. He read it, then deleted it without comment. A week passed. No word from Mom or Dad. No attempts at apologies, just a vacuum where obligation used to live. Ethan noticed the difference first. "The house sounds different," he said one night, rocking against the nursery doorframe. "Quieter?" I asked. "Peaceful," he said. "You don't flinch at your phone anymore." He was right. Still, some habits die slow. At night, I'd catch myself half expecting a text, a crisis, a demand. None came. Then on Friday, Jake came home from a grocery run, his face pale. They're telling people you abandoned them. I didn't look up from folding baby clothes. Of course they are. They said you let Dad's health fall apart, that you enjoyed it. I smiled faintly. Every villain needs a story. That night, I checked social media out of curiosity. I immediately regretted. Lauren had posted an old photo. Me, her, our parents, everyone smiling on a beach 2 summers ago. The caption read, "When family meant love, not pride." The comments were full of sympathy. "Stay strong, Lauren. You're doing amazing. Family always wins." I scrolled once, twice, then locked my phone. They wanted to win the audience, not the truth. Let them. By the following week, Jake found a small apartment nearby. He hugged me at the door, duffel bag over his shoulder. "You sure you're okay with this distance?" "I need it," I said. "You do too." He nodded. "Thanks for letting me crash here." "Anytime." When he left, the quiet returned like a gift wrapped in morning light. Ethan came up behind me, his arms around my shoulders, resting his chin against my hair. "You know," he said softly, "I think peace looks good on you." I smiled, tracing his fingers. I think I finally earned it. For the first time in years, I didn't owe anyone anything. Not an apology, not a payment, not a place at their table. The air in the house was still. My heart wasn't heavy. The baby kicked once, a tiny reminder that new stories don't inherit the debts of the old ones. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, carrying away the sound of someone else's chaos. It's been 3 months since I last stepped inside my parents' house. 3 months of mornings that don't begin with guilt. 3 months of nights where silence means safety, not punishment. The baby's due any day now. Jake settled into his new apartment. Ethan keeps a steady calm around me, like he knows any sudden movement might wake the ghosts I've only just put to sleep. If this were a movie, this would be the part where my mother calls, crying, ready to apologize. But real life is quieter, meaner, and far more predictable. The apologies never came. Instead, the rumors did. I heard from an old friend first, someone who still goes to the same community events my parents cling to like life rafts. She texted me one morning out of nowhere. "Your mom says you cut them off when your dad was sick. Is that true?" I stared at the screen for a while, then typed back. Depends who's telling the story. Because that's what families like mine do. Rewrite history until it sounds holy. In their version, I'm the daughter who changed after money. In mine, I'm the woman who stopped mistaking debt for love. By the second week of July, the smear campaign had become a full-time job for them. Lauren reposted a filtered throwback on Facebook, her kids on Grandpa's lap, smiling in coordinated outfits. Caption: "Family is everything. Don't let pride take it away." Underneath, comments piled up like confetti. "You're so strong, Lauren. Sending love to your parents. Hope your sister realizes family is all that matters." I didn't comment. Didn't need to. You don't argue with ghosts. You outlive them. That night, I stood on the balcony while Ethan fixed dinner inside. The smell of garlic and rain hung in the air. I thought about how much space grief takes up when you finally stop letting guilt rent the same room. I was still thinking about that when my phone buzzed with a new message request. Tessa Vaughn, Ethan's ex. "Hey," it said. "Your sister messaged me. Said she was worried about you. Asked if Ethan and I still talk. Weird, right? Thought you should know." I read it twice, the weight of recognition settling in my chest. Lauren had found a new tactic, digging through my present to poison it with my past. I could almost picture her fingers hovering over the send button, convincing herself it was out of concern. I typed back, "Thanks for telling me, Tessa. You didn't have to, but I appreciate it." Then I blocked Lauren's number, for good this time. Inside, Ethan called from the kitchen. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, "better than okay." He raised an eyebrow when I walked in. "You sure?" "I am," I said, slipping my phone face down on the counter. I just deleted the last way they could reach me. Dinner was quiet and easy. We talked about names for the baby, about how the nursery light flickers when the AC kicks on. Normal things. Beautifully boring things. When the plates were cleared, I went to the nursery. The mobile above the crib spun lazily, catching bits of light. I ran my fingers along the railing and whispered, "You'll never have to earn your seat at anyone's table." Ethan came to the doorway watching. "You talking to her again?" I smiled. "Always." He stepped closer, resting his chin on my shoulder. "You know," he said softly, Peace suits you. It's almost scary how calm you are. It's not calm, I said. It's clarity. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far away. Not close enough to shake the windows, just enough to remind me storms still exist, even when you stop living in them. The next day, Jake called. I ran into Dad at the pharmacy, he said. He looked old. He always was, I said. He didn't say much, just asked if I'd heard from you. And you said? I said you're happy. He nodded, like that hurt more than anything else. I didn't respond right away. He'll survive, I said finally. I know, Jake said, but he won't change. After we hung up, I sat on the couch for a long time, watching the baby roll under my ribs. It's strange how stillness can feel like motion when you've lived your whole life, bracing for the next demand. Later that week, a letter came. No handwriting this time, just a printed address label. Inside, a family photo. My parents, Lauren, her husband, their kids. Everyone smiling, perfectly framed. On the back, in my mother's neat script, it's never too late to come home. I placed it under the check on the counter, the one for $960, artifacts of a family that only remembered my worth when it had a price tag. When Ethan got home, he saw them and raised an eyebrow. You keeping those? Yeah, I said. Reminders. Of what? That love without boundaries isn't love, I said. It's debt. That night, rain finally broke. I stood by the window, watching water thread down the glass. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation for my peace. They saw. My phone stayed dark. No calls, no pleas, no guilt disguised as need. Just the steady rhythm of rain, the soft movement of life inside me, and the quiet hum of a man in the next room who never asked me to save him. Somewhere, my parents probably sat in their half-lit house, rewriting the story again. In their version, I'm the villain, the daughter who turned cold, who forgot her roots, who refused to help when family needed her. They can keep that story. It's the only one that makes them feel innocent. But in mine, I'm finally the narrator. I'm the one who closed the door and meant it. The one who built a home where no one has to beg for a seat. And when my daughter arrives, she'll grow up knowing something simple and sacred. You don't owe love to people who demand it like payment. Because peace isn't the absence of family, it's the presence of self.